My name is Jack Morrison, and for the past 12 years, I've patrolled the loneliest stretches of Colorado's mountain highways. I've pulled over drunk drivers at 3 in the morning, responded to horrific crashes in blinding snowstorms, and talked down suicidal jumpers from highway overpasses. I thought I'd seen everything this job could throw at me. I was wrong. You've heard the stories. Phantom hitchhikers who vanish from moving vehicles, ghost cars that appear in your rearview mirror and disappear into thin air, voices calling for help from empty roads. Most people dismiss them as campfire tales, urban legends born from isolation and darkness. I used to be one of those people. I'd laugh along with my fellow officers when rookies swore they'd seen something unexplainable on their night shifts. But after what I've witnessed over the years, after the encounters I can't rationalize away, I'm here to tell you something that will make you think twice before driving alone at night. Those legends aren't legends at all. They're warnings. And out here, on these desolate mountain passes, the scariest stories are the ones that are real. It was a Tuesday night in late October 2018. I remember because it was my daughter's 8th birthday, and I'd missed her party for the 3rd year in a row. Night shift patrol, it's what pays the bills, but it costs you in other ways. I was driving northbound on Highway 285, somewhere between Fairplay and Como, when the clock hit 2:47 a.m. That stretch of road is particularly desolate. Nothing but pine forests pressing in from both sides, the occasional abandoned mining town, and darkness so complete it feels like you're driving through a tunnel. My patrol car's headlights carved out a small bubble of reality in an ocean of black. The heater hummed quietly, fighting against the October cold seeping through the windows. My coffee had gone lukewarm an hour ago, sitting in the cup holder next to my radar gun and incident report clipboard. The radio crackled occasionally with dispatch chatter from other counties, mostly drunk and disorderlies, domestic disputes, the usual Tuesday night circus. Out here, though, I had nothing but static and silence. I'd been with the Colorado State Patrol for 8 years at that point. Before that, 4 years with the Denver PD. I'd seen bodies pulled from wrecked vehicles, dealt with meth heads who could bend steel with their bare hands, chased armed suspects through mountain terrain in the dead of winter. Nothing supernatural about any of it, just human stupidity, chemical imbalances, and bad luck. The old-timers at the station would sometimes talk about their unusual encounters over coffee, using that particular tone that made the rookies lean in and the veterans exchange knowing glances. I'd always tuned it out. Ghost stories were for campfires and Halloween, not for professionals with badges and guns. That was my mindset when everything changed. Mile marker 187. I'll never forget that number. I was doing a routine speed check when my headlights caught something on the shoulder ahead. A dark shape, roughly human-sized, standing perfectly still about 50 yards up the road. At first I assumed it was a deer. They're everywhere up here, especially at night. And they cause more accidents than drunk drivers. But as I approached, slowing down to avoid spooking it, something felt wrong. The shape was too tall, too upright, and it wasn't moving at all. Not even the slight fidgeting you see with animals, just stood there, facing the road. I flipped on my spotlight, the beam cutting through the darkness like a surgical knife. For just a moment, maybe half a second, I saw it clearly, a figure in what looked like old-fashioned clothing, dark and tattered. The face was pale, almost luminescent in the harsh light, and it was staring directly at me. Then my spotlight flickered. Just once, a brief interruption in the beam. When it stabilized, the figure was gone. I hit the brakes hard enough to leave skid marks. My heart was hammering against my ribs as I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out of the vehicle, one hand instinctively moving to my sidearm. The October wind bit through my uniform jacket, carrying the smell of pine and something else. Something like ozone after a lightning strike, sharp and electric. "Colorado State Patrol," I called out, my voice sounding small against the vast darkness. "Show yourself." Nothing. Just wind through the trees and the ticking of my patrol car's engine. I swept my flashlight across the shoulder, the drainage ditch, the tree line. Fresh gravel showed my tire tracks and skid marks, but there were no footprints, no disturbed vegetation, no signs anyone had been standing there at all. The ground was covered in a light layer of frost. If someone had been there, they would have left marks. I spent 15 minutes searching, documenting everything with my body camera, feeling increasingly foolish. What was I going to write in my report? Pursued suspicious figure that vanished into thin air? I could already hear the jokes at the station. Finally, I climbed back into my patrol car, cranked the heat up, and tried to rationalize what I'd seen. Fatigue. The mind playing tricks after too many night shifts. Maybe a shadow from my own vehicle, distorted by the terrain and my expectations. There had to be a logical explanation, but as I pulled back onto the highway and continued north, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been watching me, that whatever I'd seen knew exactly what I was and had chosen to disappear. Not out of fear, but because our encounter wasn't meant to go any further. Not yet. That should have been my warning. That should have been the moment I requested a transfer to day shift, or better yet, found a desk job somewhere safe and fluorescent lit. But I didn't. I was still clinging to my rational explanations, still convinced that Jack Morrison, veteran highway patrolman, didn't believe in ghost stories. I would learn. They all do, eventually. 3 months passed before the second incident. Winter had settled over the mountains with a vengeance, and Highway 285 had become a treacherous ribbon of ice and compacted snow. It was a Friday night in January, temperature hovering around 5 degrees, when I saw her. Mile marker 201, just south of the Kenosha Pass summit. The clock read 11:43 p.m. She was standing on the shoulder in the falling snow, wearing nothing but a thin summer dress, pale blue. I remember that detail clearly. No coat, no hat, no visible signs of a vehicle anywhere nearby. Her long, dark hair whipped in the wind, and even from a distance I could see she was shivering. My training kicked in immediately. Possible stranded motorist, medical emergency, exposure risks. I hit my emergency lights and pulled over about 20 feet ahead of her position, calling it in to dispatch. Unit 347 to dispatch. I got a possible 1052 at mile marker 201, Highway 285. Single female appears to be in distress. Standing by. Copy that, 347. Backup is 40 minutes out due to road conditions. Proceed with caution. 40 minutes. In this cold with that little clothing, she'd be hypothermic or dead. I grabbed my emergency blanket, threw on my heavy jacket, and stepped out into the blizzard. "Ma'am, Colorado State Patrol," I called out, approaching carefully. "Are you injured? Do you need medical assistance?" She didn't respond. She just stood there, facing away from me, her body perfectly still despite the howling wind. The snow was accumulating on her shoulders, her hair, like she'd been standing there for hours. Ma'am, I need you to respond. Can you hear me? I was maybe 10 feet away when she turned around. Her face was wrong. That's the only way I can describe it. The features were there, eyes, nose, mouth. But they were somehow flat, like a photograph instead of a living person. Her skin had a bluish tint, and her eyes were completely black. No whites, no irises, just bottomless dark pits. And she was smiling. Not a natural smile, but something stretched too wide, showing too many teeth. "Help me," she said, her voice like wind through a hollow pipe. "I'm so cold." Every instinct in my body screamed danger. My hand moved to my service weapon, though I had no idea what good it would do. I took a step back, my boots crunching in the fresh snow. "Stay where you are," I said, though my voice cracked. "Don't move." She took a step toward me, then another. Her movements were wrong too smooth, like she was gliding rather than walking. The snow beneath her feet didn't crunch. She left no footprints. I backed up faster, nearly stumbling, my hand on my gun but not drawing it. What was I going to shoot? This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. "I just need a ride," she said, her smile growing impossibly wider. "Just a short ride down the mountain." I turned and ran. I'm not proud of it, but I ran back to my patrol car, threw myself inside, and slammed the locks. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely key the radio. "Dispatch 347. I need immediate backup at my location. I looked in my rear-view mirror. She was standing directly behind my vehicle, maybe 6 inches from my bumper, still smiling that terrible smile. But in the mirror, I could see through her. The falling snow was visible through her body, like she was made of frosted glass. I threw the car into drive and accelerated, fishtailing on the ice, not caring about protocol or procedure or anything except getting away from that thing. When I finally looked back, she was gone. Just empty highway and falling snow. I drove straight past my patrol zone to the next town, pulled into a gas station with its fluorescent lights blazing like salvation, and sat there shaking until dawn. I called dispatch and told them I'd had vehicle trouble. I couldn't tell them the truth. Who would believe it? The next day I requested the dash cam footage. The file was corrupted, 7 minutes of static exactly covering the time of my encounter. My body camera footage showed nothing but snow and darkness. No figure. No woman in a blue dress. Nothing. But I know what I saw, and when I checked the records later, I found out that a young woman in a blue dress had died at that exact mile marker in 1987, struck by a semi-truck during a winter storm. She'd been hitchhiking to Denver. She was still trying to get that ride. If the hitchhiker encounter had shaken me, what happened in March completely shattered my sense of reality. It started with a routine radar check on Highway 9 between Fairplay and Hartselle. 3:17 a.m. on a clear moonless night. My radar gun lit up with a vehicle approaching from the south at 97 miles per hour, 30 miles over the speed limit. I couldn't see the car yet, but I could track it on the radar. I pulled onto the highway, waiting for it to pass so I could pursue. Standard traffic stop. I'd done it 1,000 times. Then I saw the headlights cresting the hill, moving fast. But something was off. The lights were yellowish, old-fashioned, not the bright white LEDs of modern vehicles. And they were too far apart, wider than any standard car. I hit my lights and siren, pulling out behind it as it blew past. The radar still showed 97 mph, but when I accelerated to catch up, the distance between us didn't change. I was doing 110, pushing my patrol car to its limits, and the vehicle ahead maintained the exact same gap. In my headlight beams, I could make out the shape. A large, boxy sedan, dark-colored, maybe from the 1970s or early 80s. But the details kept shifting like I was looking at it through water. The license plate was there one moment, gone the next. The rear window seemed to show occupants, then emptiness. Dispatch Unit 347 in pursuit of a speeding vehicle southbound Highway 9, approaching mile marker 156, requesting backup and running plates. I called out the plate number, or what I thought I'd seen. Dispatch came back confused. 347, that plate number doesn't exist in our system. Can you confirm? I looked again. The plate was different now, different numbers, different configuration. I called out the new number. Same response, doesn't exist. Then the vehicle did something impossible. Without braking, without even slowing down, it took a sharp right turn onto a dirt access road that I knew for a fact was too narrow and too rough for the speed it was traveling. I followed, my patrol car bouncing violently over the rutted surface. The road led to an abandoned mining complex. I knew this area. It dead-ended at a collapsed mine entrance. There was nowhere to go, nowhere to hide. I had it trapped, but when I rounded the final bend, my headlights illuminating the chain-link fence and the boarded-up mine shaft, the vehicle was gone. Just gone. No dust cloud, no tire tracks in the dirt, no sign it had ever been there. The fence was locked, the chains rusted solid. Nobody had opened that gate in years. I got out and searched the entire area with my spotlight. I documented everything. I checked for side roads, for places a vehicle could hide. Nothing. The ghost car had simply ceased to exist. When I reviewed my dashcam later, it showed my pursuit, showed my speed climbing, showed the turn onto the access road. But where the vehicle should have been in frame, there was nothing. Just empty highway, empty road, me chasing absolutely nothing at 110 miles per hour. But my radar log told a different story. It showed the target vehicle, showed the speeds, showed the sudden stop at the mine entrance. The data was there, even if the visual wasn't. I filed my report, keeping it vague. Pursued speeding vehicle lost visual contact. The sergeant looked at me with that expression I'd seen on the veterans' faces, the one that said he knew exactly what I wasn't saying. The ghost car, he said quietly, not as a question. Highway 9 near the old Sterling mine. I nodded. You're not the first, he said. You won't be the last. That car's been running that road since before I joined the force 30 years ago. 6 other officers have chased it. None have caught it. He pulled a file from his desk drawer. Yellowed papers. Incident reports dating back to 1976. Different officers, different years, same road, same ghost car. And at the bottom of the file, a newspaper clipping from 1974. Family of 4 dies in fiery crash near Sterling Mine. The vehicle description matched exactly. By the summer of 2019, I'd stopped trying to convince myself these incidents were isolated anomalies. The encounters were becoming more frequent, more varied, and increasingly impossible to rationalize away. But nothing prepared me for the sounds. It started on a humid August night, somewhere between Buena Vista and Poncha Springs, on Highway 285. The air was thick and oppressive, unusual for the mountains, and a strange electrical charge seemed to hang in the atmosphere. My radio had been acting up all evening, crackling with interference, picking up fragments of conversations that dispatch swore weren't on our frequencies. At 2:33 a.m., I heard the scream. It cut through the night like a knife. A woman's voice, raw with terror and pain, coming from somewhere off to my right. The kind of scream that makes your blood freeze, that triggers every protective instinct a cop has. I immediately killed my headlights, rolled down my window, and listened. There it was again. Closer this time. A woman crying out for help, her voice hoarse and desperate. The sound was coming from the forest, maybe 50 yards off the highway. Dispatch Unit 347, I have a possible distress call. Civilian in danger, approximately mile marker 142. Investigating now. I grabbed my flashlight and service weapon, locked the patrol car, and entered the tree line. The forest was unnaturally quiet. No insects, no wind, no animal sounds. Just that terrible crying, always seeming to come from just ahead, just out of reach. I followed it for 20 minutes, marking my trail, calling out to identify myself. Colorado State Patrol, call out if you can hear me. I'm here to help. The crying would stop when I called, then resume from a slightly different direction, leading me deeper. I was about to turn back when I heard it clearly, no more than 10 feet away. Help me, please. He's going to kill me. I spun toward the voice, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. Nothing. Just trees and shadows and the smell of pine and something else, something like rot, like decay, like death. Then I heard the laughter, low and cruel, coming from all around me, not one voice, but many. And I realized with mounting horror that I'd been led far from my vehicle, deep into unfamiliar terrain by something that wanted me here. I ran. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I ran back toward the highway, branches tearing at my uniform, my flashlight beam bouncing wildly. Behind me, the laughter grew louder, and beneath it I could hear other sounds. Whispers in a language I didn't recognize, the sound of footsteps that matched my pace exactly, breathing that wasn't my own. I burst onto the highway, my lungs burning, and found my patrol car exactly where I'd left it. But when I checked my body camera later, the entire incident lasted only 4 minutes. 4 minutes. I'd been in those woods for what felt like half an hour. The voice analysis software picked up something on the recording, though. Underneath my breathing and footsteps, there were dozens of other voices, all whispering the same thing over and over. Turn back, not yet, not yet. 3 days later, I learned that a woman had disappeared in that exact area in 2003. Her body was found 6 months later, less than 100 yards from where I'd entered the forest. She'd been murdered by her ex-husband. Her last words, according to a hiker who'd heard her screaming, were, "Help me, please. He's going to kill me." She was still calling for help 16 years later, and whatever else was in those woods with her, it knew I was coming. The children were worse than anything else I'd encountered. Highway 24, west of Colorado Springs, has a stretch of road locals call the Devil's Mile. It's not the official name, you won't find it on any maps, but ask any trucker or long-haul driver, and they'll know exactly what you're talking about. It's the mile between markers 284 and 285, a straight, unremarkable section of 2-lane highway that cuts through rolling hills and scrub brush. People see things there, always have. I'd heard the stories, of course, had filed them away with all the other highway legends and superstitions, until I worked a night shift in October and saw them for myself. It was 4:12 a.m., that dead hour before dawn when the world feels abandoned. I was doing a routine patrol, my headlights, the only light for miles. Then, in the middle of the road, I saw the boy. He couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old, wearing pajamas with cartoon characters on them. He was standing perfectly still in my lane, facing me, his small hands at his sides. No adult nearby. No vehicle. Just a child alone in the middle of a highway in the middle of nowhere. I hit my brakes hard, the ABS chattering, as I came to a stop maybe 20 feet from him. My heart was hammering. A child, out here, alone. Every worst-case scenario ran through my mind: kidnapping, abuse, accident, medical emergency. I threw on my emergency lights and got out, already calling it in. Dispatch 347. I have a minor child on the highway, mile marker 284, Highway 24. Child appears unresponsive, possible medical emergency. Requesting immediate backup and ambulance. Copy 347, units and medical en route. E to 15 minutes. I approach slowly, my hands visible, my voice gentle. Hey there, buddy, my name's Jack. I'm a police officer. Are you hurt? Where are your parents? He didn't respond, didn't even blink. Just stared at me with eyes that caught my headlight beams and reflected them back like an animal's. That's when I saw there were others. A little girl, maybe 5 years old, standing on the shoulder to my left. A teenager, tall and gangly, emerging from the darkness to my right. Another child behind me, then another, and another, all in pajamas or nightgowns, all perfectly still, all staring. I spun in a slow circle, my hand moving to my weapon, though I didn't draw it. There were at least a dozen of them now, forming a rough circle around me and my patrol car. Children of all ages, all staring with those reflective eyes, none of them making a sound. Dispatch, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Be advised. Multiple minors at this location. I count at least 12. Unknown situation. Expedite that backup. The boy in front of me tilted his head, the movement too fluid, too smooth. Then he smiled. It wasn't a child's smile, it was something ancient wearing a child's face. You see us, he said, his voice a hollow echo. You see us. Then, as if on cue, all the children began to move toward me, slowly, methodically, still silent except for the sound of bare feet on asphalt. I backed toward my patrol car, my training warring with my instincts. They're children. You can't draw on children, but they're not children. Look at their eyes. Look at how they move. I made it to my car door, yanked it open, and threw myself inside. The children kept coming, pressing against the windows, their pale faces and dark eyes filling every inch of glass. Small hands pressed against the doors, the hood, the roof. The car rocked slightly under their weight. I sat there frozen as they surrounded me completely. Then all at once, they stopped. The boy who'd spoken pressed his face against my driver's side window, his breath fogging the glass, though I could see right through him now, see the highway and the darkness beyond. This road remembers, he whispered, his voice somehow audible through the closed window. We all died here. Every one of us, the bus, the fire. We're still burning. Then they were gone. Just gone. As if they'd never been there. When backup arrived, 12 minutes later, they found me sitting in my patrol car, every door locked, staring straight ahead. I couldn't speak for almost an hour. The research I did later confirmed what I already knew in my gut. In 1956, a school bus carrying 23 children from a nearby ranch community had crashed on Highway 24, mile marker 284. The bus caught fire. All 23 children died. Most were in their pajamas. They'd been heading to an early morning field trip. The stretch of road was rerouted after the accident, but the old path, the path where those children died, runs parallel to the current highway. Exactly where I'd been parked. They're still there, still waiting, still burning. The animals know. That's what I learned over those months. Whatever haunts these roads, whatever thin place exists between our world and somewhere else, the animals sense it before we do. I started noticing patterns. Deer herds fleeing from empty stretches of road, not because of cars or predators, but as if driven by invisible terror. Birds refusing to fly over certain sections of highway, creating strange aerial borders you could see at dawn and dusk. Coyotes pacing alongside my patrol car for miles, not hunting, not curious, but almost protective. The black dog appeared in November. I was patrolling Highway 160, near Wolf Creek Pass, when I saw it in my headlights. A massive black dog, bigger than any natural canine, sitting in the middle of my lane. Not a bear, not a wolf, but something that borrowed the shape of a dog without quite getting the details right. Its proportions were off, its movements too fluid, its eyes too aware. I stopped, and it looked directly at me. Then it stood, walked to the passenger side of my patrol car, and sat down, waiting. Every instinct told me not to, but I reached over and unlocked the passenger door. It opened from the outside. I saw the handle move on its own, and the black dog jumped into my passenger seat, settled down, and stared straight ahead through the windshield. I didn't question it. By then, I'd learned that some things on these roads operate by rules I don't understand. So I just drove, with this impossible creature sitting beside me like a partner on patrol. 20 minutes later, I came around a blind curve at exactly the right speed to avoid hitting a truck that had jackknifed across both lanes. If I'd been going any faster, any slower, if I'd come around that curve even 5 seconds earlier or later, I would have died. The black dog turned to look at me, and I swear it nodded. Then it simply faded away, like smoke dissipating in the wind. I've seen it 3 times since. Always before something dangerous, always watching. The old-timers call it the Guardian. They say it's been protecting highway patrol officers for decades, leading them away from danger, warning them of disasters to come. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the ghost of some loyal police dog or something far older, but I'm grateful it's there. There's a filing cabinet in the back corner of Station 12, behind the supply closet, that doesn't appear on any official inventory. It's old, probably from the 1970s, forest green metal with a lock that hasn't worked in decades. Everyone knows it's there. Nobody talks about it. That's where we keep the real reports. I learned about it 3 months into my strange encounters, when Sergeant Bill Hastings pulled me aside after I'd filed yet another vague incident report about equipment malfunction and visual disturbances. "Follow me," he said, not unkindly. He led me past the break room, past the evidence locker, to that forgotten corner where dust motes danced in the fluorescent light. He opened the bottom drawer and pulled out a stack of files easily 3 inches thick. "Read these," he said. "Then you'll understand you're not crazy, you're not alone, and you're definitely not the first." The files dated back to 1961, when the Colorado State Patrol first established permanent presence in the mountain regions. Different handwriting, different officers, different decades, but the same stories: phantom hitchhikers, ghost vehicles, spectral children, voices in the darkness, the black dog, all of it documented in careful detail by men and women who'd sworn an oath to serve and protect, who'd seen things that couldn't exist but did anyway. Some reports were clinical, almost detached. At 0237 hours, observed unidentified figure on Highway 285, mile marker 187. Figure disappeared upon approach. No physical evidence recovered. Others were raw and desperate. I don't know what I saw tonight, but I know what I felt. Pure evil, ancient, and hungry. I'm requesting transfer to Denver. I can't do this anymore, Chick. We have a code for these incidents. UA, for unusual activity. It goes in our daily logs, buried among the drunk drivers and speeding tickets and accident responses. To anyone looking at the records, it's meaningless bureaucratic shorthand. But every officer in the mountain districts knows what UA really means. It means you've crossed over into that other world that exists alongside our own, the one where the dead don't stay dead and the rules of reality don't always apply. There's an understanding among us. You document everything: date, time, location, weather conditions, what you saw, what you felt, what happened. You write it down while it's fresh, while you can still trust your memory. Then you file it in that green cabinet, and you don't speak of it again unless someone else has a UA encounter. It's not an official policy. There's no manual, no training protocol, no chain of command. It's just something that's evolved over decades, a collective coping mechanism for dealing with the impossible. We're witnesses to things that science can't explain, that society doesn't believe in, that our own families would question. So we document it for each other, creating a secret archive of the unexplainable. If you want proof that something truly wrong exists on these highways, look no further than case file UA 2020-047, dated May 15, 2020. The file is thick, professionally documented, and contains physical evidence that multiple forensic analysts couldn't explain. It was Officer Sarah Chen's case. She'd been with the patrol for 6 years, former Denver PD, solid reputation, nobody's fool. She was working Highway 285 between Poncha Springs and Sargent's when she got a call about an abandoned vehicle at mile marker 213. She arrived at 3:42 a.m. to find a silver Toyota Camry parked on the shoulder, engine running, driver's door open, interior lights on. Standard procedure: check for driver, check for injuries, check the vehicle. The car was warm, radio playing softly, a woman's purse on the passenger seat with wallet, phone, and keys inside. No signs of struggle, no blood, no damage to the vehicle. The driver had simply vanished. But it was what Sarah found inside the car that made this case extraordinary. The temperature. Despite the engine running and the heater being on, the interior of that vehicle was freezing, literally freezing. Ice crystals had formed on the inside of the windows. The seat where the driver had been sitting was covered in frost. When Sarah checked her thermal imaging camera, the temperature inside the car registered at 28 degrees Fahrenheit. The temperature outside, 55 degrees. Thermodynamically impossible. The heater was pumping out hot air. The engine was warm. Nothing about the vehicle's mechanical systems explained why the interior was below freezing, while the exterior was mild spring weather. Sarah called for backup, and when Officer Marcus Webb arrived 20 minutes later, he documented the same phenomenon. They took dozens of photos, video footage, thermal readings. They impounded the vehicle and had it examined by 3 different mechanics and an HVAC specialist. Nobody could explain it. Then there were the handprints on the inside of the windows, dozens of them, all different sizes, pressed against the glass from the inside as if people had been trying to get out, or something had been trying to get in. They were frozen into the frost, perfectly preserved. When forensics tried to lift prints, they found something impossible. The handprints had no dermal ridges, no fingerprints, no unique identifiers, just smooth, blank impressions of hands that shouldn't exist. The driver, a 32-year-old woman named Jennifer Walsh, was found 3 days later. She was standing in a field 7 miles from where her car had been abandoned. barefoot, in the same clothes she'd been wearing, with no memory of the past 72 hours. Medical examination showed signs of severe hypothermia and frostbite, despite the warm May weather. She kept saying the same thing over and over. They were so cold. All of them. They just wanted to be warm. She never drove that stretch of road again. Last I heard, she'd moved to Florida. The vehicle was eventually returned to her, but she refused to take it. It sat in our impound lot for 3 months before being sold at auction. The buyer brought it back 2 weeks later, demanding a refund. He said the interior temperature would randomly drop to freezing, regardless of external conditions or mechanical operation. We ended up junking it. The case file remains open. Officially, it's classified as abandoned vehicle, driver located, no crime committed. Unofficially, it's one of the most thoroughly documented supernatural incidents in the history of the Colorado State Patrol. The more I researched, the more patterns emerged. Every hotspot for paranormal activity corresponded to some historical tragedy. Mile marker 187, where I'd seen my first apparition. Site of a murder-suicide in 1992. The stretch where Sarah Chen found the frozen car. A Ute burial ground, according to local tribal historians, disturbed during highway construction in the 1960s. Highway 24's Devil's Mile, where the ghost children appear. The 1956 school bus fire I mentioned earlier. But that's not all. Before the highway existed, that land was part of the Trail of Tears route, used to forcibly relocate Native Americans in the 1800s. Before that, it was a battlefield during conflicts between different tribes. The ground there has been soaked in tragedy for over 2 centuries. I started mapping it all out, creating a database of incidents and their historical contexts. What I found was disturbing. The highways weren't just built over tragic sites. In many cases, the tragedies seemed to follow the roads themselves, as if the act of cutting through the mountains, of imposing our straight lines and modern infrastructure on ancient landscapes, had created wounds that couldn't heal. The old-timers had a saying, "The road remembers." I used to think it was just colorful language. Now I understand its literal truth. These highways are archives of suffering, and some events leave marks that time can't erase. I've been patrolling these mountain highways for 12 years now, but I've only truly been doing my job for the last 5. That's when I stopped fighting what I was seeing and started accepting it. That's when I became the kind of officer these roads actually need. The change didn't happen overnight. It was gradual, a slow erosion of my skepticism, worn away by encounter after encounter, evidence after evidence, until I couldn't deny the truth anymore. I wasn't just protecting the living from mundane dangers. I was standing watch over a border between worlds, keeping vigil in places where the veil between life and death had worn dangerously thin. My patrol protocols changed. I started carrying things that aren't standard issue. Salt, iron railroad spikes, sage bundles I buy from a Ute elder who understands what these roads really are. I developed rituals that would sound insane if I spoke them aloud. Never stopping at mile marker 187 between 2 and 3 a.m., always acknowledging the black dog when it appears, speaking respectfully to the empty air at certain locations where I know the dead are listening. The veteran officers understood. We have an unspoken code, a system of knowledge passed down through generations of patrolmen who've worked these mountains. They taught me to recognize the signs, the sudden temperature drops, the electrical interference, the way animals behave when something otherworldly is near. They taught me that respect goes further than weapons, that acknowledgement is sometimes all the dead want. You're not fighting them, Sergeant Hastings told me once. You're negotiating. You're showing them you see them, you respect them, and you're not a threat. Most of them just want to be remembered. They want their deaths to mean something. It changed how I see my badge. I used to think I was protecting people from criminals and accidents. Now I know I'm doing something else entirely. I'm a guardian at a crossing point, keeping watch over roads that remember too much, mediating between the living and the dead, ensuring that whatever dwells in the darkness stays where it belongs. The hardest part isn't the encounters themselves. It's carrying the weight of what I know in a world that doesn't want to believe. I can't tell my wife why I sometimes wake up screaming, why I refuse to drive certain routes with our daughter in the car, why I check every dark corner of our house before going to bed. She thinks it's PTSD, and maybe she's right, but not the kind the department psychologist understands. I can't tell my fellow officers from the city districts what really happens in the mountains. They'd think I've lost my mind. Hell, I sometimes think I've lost my mind until I open that green filing cabinet and read through decades of reports that prove I'm not alone in this. The isolation is crushing some nights. I'm part of a secret fraternity of highway patrolmen who know the truth, but we're scattered across hundreds of miles, working different shifts, rarely seeing each other. We communicate through those filed reports, through coded notes left in daily logs, through meaningful glances when someone mentions a UA incident at shift change. But there's also purpose in it. Pride even. I'm doing something that matters. Something most people can't do because they can't see what I see. I'm protecting travelers, not just from drunk drivers and icy roads, but from things that shouldn't exist but do. Every night I patrol these highways, I'm standing between the innocent and the inexplicable. Some nights, when I'm out there alone in the darkness with only my headlights and my radio static for company, I feel it. The weight of all those deaths, all that tragedy, all those restless spirits. But I also feel the responsibility. Someone has to bear witness. Someone has to remember. Someone has to keep watch. That someone is me. That someone is us. The highway patrol officers who work the night shift in the mountains, who see things we can never speak of, who protect people from dangers they'll never know existed. So here's what I'm telling you now, whoever you are, wherever you are. The next time you're driving alone on a dark highway in the middle of the night, and you see something that doesn't quite make sense, a figure that vanishes when you look directly at it, headlights that shouldn't be there, a child standing where no child should be, trust your instincts. Don't stop. Don't investigate. Just keep driving. And if you see a highway patrol officer parked on a lonely stretch of mountain road at 3 a.m., lights off, just sitting there in the darkness, understand that we're not sleeping on the job. We're not avoiding work. We're standing watch over something that you pray you never have to see. The legends you've heard about haunted highways, they're not legends. They're warnings. And out here, in the mountains of Colorado, on these roads that remember everything, the scariest stories are the ones that are real. I'm Jack Morrison. I'm a highway patrolman, and I see things that will haunt me for the rest of my life, but I'll keep driving these roads anyway, because someone has to. Because the dead don't rest, and the living need protecting, and the line between those two worlds gets thinner every night. And because these highways, with all their ghosts and their tragedies and their impossibilities, are mine to patrol, mine to protect, mine to understand, even when understanding costs me my sleep, my peace of mind, and my certainty about what's real. Stay safe out there. Drive carefully, and remember, some roads remember you back.